that web and mobile space are very different. Mobile is really complicated. It's a complex place to work in. So what do you do for your own knowledge and wisdom gaining into this space? Do you go to conferences? Are there any sources that you read or keep up to speed with on the regular basis? So what is like for a product manager in mobile to get up to speed with the latest technology and different frameworks and so on?
So quite often, one of the things that kind of I think we kind of make a big mistake on in product is we tend to look to our immediate competitors and say, hey, how are they doing it? Yeah. And judge ourselves versus them. Now, I prefer to look at best in practice mobile as, nothing to do with what I'm doing in Workday. But how is this company that has a reputation for being best in practice in mobile, how are they doing it? How is, if I'm using a service, I'll always download their app and see how they're doing it. I'll always check their mobile web and see how they're doing their mobile web. Are they kind of responsive webbing it in a kind of, squished up way? Are they kind of using, one of these kind of frameworks? It used to be, I can't remember the one that Bootstrap one that everyone used for a while. Are they just using that? Sometimes though, and this makes me laugh, is when you go onto a website page and you can see that that's been designed from mobile for day one. It'll even be a little hamburger now on it, and you'll be just like, lovely. You're like, web is not your top priority. I love to see it. Those companies go up in my estimation straight away. So that's kind of what I kind of do. I tend to focus in on what's happening in mobile as a whole. I'm obviously someone who follows the app dev conferences, the Google conferences. We're lucky in our team to have Raul, who is very close with Google, so he's able to kind of give me the headlines on that. So I would absolutely kind of and one of the good things about COVID is we've all got a little more relaxed with remote conferencing.
Right.
Now it doesn't kind of make up for not being able to network when you get there and all that kind of stuff. The speed dating stuff they do is not the same. But being able to get those recorded conversations, hearing about them is very, very interesting. I'm also a big fan of UXDX as well, that happens in Dublin. I think that's kind of, really kind of valuable. I think as well is just using mobile whenever I can, and kind of seeing what's happening on that front as well. I follow kind of a lot of product people like Marty Kagan and the Silicon Valley Group. I follow Roman Pilchner and just kind of product as a whole, because I think one of the most important things, especially when you work in a web company that has a mobile app, is you have to be aware of how web is working.
Right, definitely, because they both go hand in hand. Yeah, so as a PM in mobile, you need to know all the features and the capabilities that web is offering. So mobile person needs to have more skill set than a web person should. Maybe I'm a bit selfish here.
I think it's subject matter expertise. So whereas the web person might have a subject matter expertise, and they might also have it in their specific domain in the sense that, hey, I run the HR software as well. They have that, whereas I primarily have mobile expertise. So it's kind of, it's a bit different. Now, one of the things that I'll always push when I'm talking to my colleagues is mobile affordances, stuff you can only do on mobile. Does that add value? Does that add value to users? And the other thing kind of that I think is massively important when we're having those discussions is actually I have to advocate for the mobile user very strongly. So there'll be a lot of things that people think should be on mobile, and they'll say, oh, this user would like to use mobile for this, this, and this. And I'll kind of say, well, that user isn't a big mobile user.
Yeah.
They might like to use mobile for that, but I have this user here who needs to use mobile.
Right. Who needs to use mobile?
Yeah. This is, you know,
yeah.
someone who doesn't have a desktop, or maybe only has a desktop for half an hour a day in a shared office or something like that, or when they're not having to walk the shop floor.
Right.
How can we, you know, what are the steps? And so, you know, you know where there'll be a big form that someone has to fill in to do something. What are the steps we can get rid of from that form that aren't necessary for the mobile experience? Oh, but they might want to, and they can do that on the desktop later. What do they need to do for this?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the conversations that kind of we have. You know, any conversation always needs to be focused on the user.
Right.
There's a lot of things we can talk about from a technology point of view, but you know, I don't build software for technology. I build it for people to use.
True.
So, you know, one of the phrases that sometimes I'll use in a refinement, and the guys know it's code for I don't like this, is that sounds technically convenient. And it'll be me saying, I understand why you all like it, but I don't like it because it's not helping my users.
Yeah.
It might be helping you guys,
but
I see no benefit for my users.
Right.
So that's kind of, you know, it's good to have an understanding, and you know, and that, but I really think that whenever I'm talking to people, it's really understanding the needs of mobile users, which we're really lucky. We've got an amazing research team. We've got an amazing UX team.
Incredible.
I'm a mobile user myself, but I have to remember I'm an office mobile user.
Yeah, exactly.
I have
Somebody
different
who's
needs.
on the field, it has a different purpose altogether. Yeah, but as a PM in mobile, we all have to fight for what value our user is getting. We have to keep that in mind. To be an advocate of our customer or a user or a consumer every day.
Right.
And Jim, what would be your North Star? Do you have a North Star metrics or a KPI in mobile?
We do. I mean, we're always looking at mobile adoption compared to desktop adoption. We're looking at how that kind of breaks down on industries. It's one of the ways that we kind of focused in on the frontline worker, because we were able to say, hey, people in these industries, they are using mobile to a greater percentage than people in these other industries. What makes these different? We're able to dig into that and kind of really find that out. Then we were able to kind of compare the top tasks in mobile compared to the top tasks in desktop. No surprise, they are different.
Yeah.
You know, the average time someone spends in a mobile device compared to the average time someone spends in a desktop, totally different.
Yeah.
It's things like that. Also, as well, there's other kind of indirect things that we can see. We can see, for example, that most desktop usage will be in a company device. So there's certain kind of security that's inbuilt in there. Mobile, we have the bring your own device to work kind of thing. Now, you know, there are some industries where the only people who are allowed to use the mobile app are people who have company phones. Then there are other industries where actually we want our users to be able to clock in, clock out. We don't want to give them all phones. We want them to be able to do that on their own phones, but we need to be able to make sure they can do that securely and cannot access anything else in there. So we do have, based on usage knowledge, we do have other things that are kind of implied on mobile that we have to look at differently from desktop. And that's something we have to let our kind of web colleagues in on. For example, you know, we have expenses systems where you can take a photograph of the receipt because you're on a phone, and it's great and it can all match up. But you might have people whose phone is locked down and they can't take photos from it because it's a work device, and they run all their systems through a MDM, and the MDM locks down a bunch of things. So we have to be careful, even when we use mobile affordances, that we are taking into account those might be locked down for some people. So it's very it's not an exact science. I'm very pro data driven things, but I always see it as the start of wisdom, not the end of it, because the data can only really tell you what's happening today. It can't predict what will happen tomorrow.
In the future, exactly.
Yeah.
It cannot predict that, for sure. And Jen, so when it comes to gathering that data, would you prefer more Firebase and collaborating with the UX teams, researchers and consultants, or there are other ways that you would gather that data? I'm very curious to understand, because this question comes up every now and then to me. I've been put up that, how do you get your data?
So I'm very lucky. We have a metrics team, and I have a really amazing metrics analyst who works with me. And, one of the things I regularly look at is I look at the top 20 tasks in my area, the talent grow area. And, one of the things I'm interested in is there seasonality in there? Because that would imply there are certain times when I should be doing something and certain times I shouldn't be doing something in those areas. Interesting as well, what tasks do we have in our mobile app that are never used?
Yeah.
Should those be removed? Should we have a conversation about whether maybe they're broken, maybe they're not fit for purpose the way but it's using that data to start a conversation. We also have an amazing research team. Now, the research team, sometimes that research is kind of, they've gone on kind of more of a, what I would call a fishing trip. They've looked at something and they've had indirect learnings that might be applied somewhere. They didn't go out looking for that, but they found it, kind of stuff. Then they've also, I've worked with them on very direct kind of research pieces where we've wanted to know, for example, how learning was used, and they've really kind of focused in. They've spoken to users, and that means when I'm reporting back to the dev team, I can literally play them a snippet of a user telling them the frustration, the pain point they felt at a certain point of view. Then we also have usability as well. That learning research took place next to a usability. I think so. I got generative and evaluative at the same time, which was fantastic. And we were able to see which of the research items were reinforced by the usability and where there was difference between the two. Because I think with the research, the users were able to talk more, and they were able to be less directed by what we wanted to find. So the two together were fantastic. Now, I was so lucky to get that amount of research in an area, and so it kind of gave me a lot of food for. I work places where you don't get that amount. One of the things sometimes you have to do is you have to do a bit of guerrilla usability things where you may have a few mock-ups, you take them around the office, get some feedback then. If you do that, make sure you go to the support team, make sure you go to the sales team, because they will give you massively different perspectives than the other product people will give you.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. Wow. And then just one last question before we wrap up. So I see that you have joined Workday in the middle of COVID times. So what helped you the most at Workday to get, to collaborate with the teams, to get comfortable with when it comes to knowledge transfer as well? Were there tools and techniques? What did you love the best when it comes to that smooth onboarding and transitioning into a new workspace with a new team? Yeah, I'm just curious that what tools, techniques, and the structure that you found have helped.
I think the thing that really stands out to me about Workday is the culture. Like, I've worked a lot of places where they'll talk about the great culture, and we follow these 5 sayings, and it's all about this, and we get drunk every other month or something like that, and that's really the culture. Which is, don't get me wrong, I loved working at those places, but the thing I'd say about Workday is Workday treats this culture seriously.
Yeah,
and it's
true.
They're not kind of you hear a lot about diversity. These guys are following through. I have worked places that are not diverse. I have
Yeah.
worked places where you go into a workshop and everyone has the same opinions
Yeah.
and they'll argue over granular detail, but it's largely already been agreed before you come in.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff, because the highest paid person in the room has already said it. So,
Already said it. Yeah.
So I've worked in places like that, when they talk about culture fit, they really mean you're not going to cause us problems, are you?
Yeah.
Workday is not like that. They genuinely believe in diversity. Now, that in itself is a good enough reason to be diversity is fair and equitable, and that is a good enough reason to be diverse. There is a business reason to be diverse, and it's what I talked about earlier. It's challenge, it's different perspectives. If you just want to make software for middle class people, just get middle class white people in a room and they'll come up with some stuff. If you want to build global software, get global points of view in that room.
Global
and that is what
community
Workday
there.
does.
And
what it advocates
beautiful.
for. And you will get better software in the end.
Right.
100%. And you will,
beautifully said.
I have to be prepared for every meeting I go into, because I can't guarantee what the outcome's going to be. I've worked in companies where I don't have to prepare for every meeting.
Because you know what's going to be the outcome of that. Right. Wow, you said it so beautifully. Wow, I love this conversation. It's awesome.